This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video. Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Ensign's Chair. This episode, we are going to finally get back into the Ian Lawrence tribute build of the NCC 1701A. And first of all, I'll say I took a little bit of a step back, and I'm kind of starting over. I want to go more over the paint mixtures I'm using and what paints I'm using for this. And the paints are still the same that I went over in the introduction video, but I didn't really give, first starting, I didn't really give any mixture information. And I kind of want to give, especially those new to modeling, just a base at least to start with. Some people want to use slightly different paints or even maybe way different paints than what I used. But for those of you that like the results I get here and kind of want to try to mimic that, I want to give you a better idea of what the paint mixtures and ratios are that I'm using. So I'm going to get into that. I also took a step back because there was a couple things I wasn't happy with, and I'll talk about those in the video. But first, before we get into the video, I want to give a shout out to Boyd over at TrekWorks for giving me a shout out and putting in a good word for me. And I've gotten quite a few new subscribers because of that. So thank you, Boyd, and to those just joining me, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot. It's good for my sponsors to see my subscriber numbers continue to go up because it lets them know that there are people actually seeing the advertisements at the beginning of these videos for them. So if you subscribe, I greatly appreciate it. If you don't, please at least hit that like button down below. Let me know that you got some useful information out of this video. But thank you to Boyd. For those of you just joining, not used to or haven't really seen any of my videos before. I typically do mostly Star Trek builds. I do some other builds here and there. I'm a big Airwolf fan, so you'll see I did an Airwolf build. And I think I did one or two other builds maybe. But mostly it's Star Trek. I do also do, from time to time, I'll do a filming location or something. But it's mostly about the models. So thank you for joining me. Excuse me. I hope you get some use out of the information that I provide in these videos. I'm working on this. I've got I just started, and I'll have the first episode coming out soon of the Kronos 1. And I've also got a Death Star, exploding Death Star lighting kit that I'm working on. And I've also got my 1250 Reliant that's a work in progress. But I'll talk more about that as we go along. So, thank you for joining me. We'll get into the model, so give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, guys, so I got this back where it needs to be, and it took quite a bit of work to undo what I'd done so far and come back. I want to start at step one with this because in talking or communicating with Gary, I should say, I told him I would try to go over this as best as possible and give out the paint mixtures I'm using. Now, I just want to say when I start this that the paint mixtures I'm using are correct to my eyes, and not everybody sees color the same way. So just keep that in mind, that when you mix these paints yourself, you may want to make some adjustment to it because maybe it'll look different to you than what it does to me. Lighting can have a big effect on that. So I've got a nice bright build studio now, and if I was building inside my house still, it might look a little different as well. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. Keep that in mind. I'm not saying that these paints are the only colors and that these are 100% what the studio model is. I'm saying that they look correct to my eyes. So keep that in mind when I go over these. But I'm ready now to go back and paint this band around the BC deck to include the gray up the front here, and then the navy, the dark gray blue, I guess I should say, not navy blue, but gray blue. Well, I guess maybe it is a navy gray blue, I don't know. But that gray blue around the officer's lounge windows. So the first thing I'm going to do is mix the gray color, and I'm not going to worry about masking this. And this is the way I'm doing it. Not everybody does it the same way. I'm not going to worry about masking this right now. What I'm going to do is get these colors down. I'll get the gray down, and then I will mask off the gray area, and then I will do the blue and mask off the blue, and then I'll just come back over this again with white. That's the easiest way that I've found to do it so far, because when I try to mask off the white and just paint the gray, it never came out looking right to me. It's kind of hard to mask that off with these angles the way they are. And I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm sure there's people that have done it that way. But I just, personally, I couldn't get it to look right. And I decided that I was going to try this way. This is the way I did it the first time I painted it, and it turned out really nice. So in going back to this, and just to clarify, another reason why I went back over it wasn't just because I wanted to go more into the colors and the mixes I'm using, but also I had mentioned before about, let me focus this, about these panels that are in the front here. And I had replaced the three smaller ones on each side near the windows, but I said I was going to leave these alone. Well, the more I sat here and looked at it, the more I just liked how clean these came out. I have a piece of hair on there. How clean the three that I replaced on each side looked, and they just didn't, the ones that were molded in just didn't match. They just didn't look right. So the more I looked at it, the more I decided that, you know what, I just need to go ahead and take those off and do them all with, well, I'm not going to use, I was using sheet styrene before, but what I did was I actually made these panels in my, in a Tinkercad and printed them on my 3D printer. So I've got them over to the side here, and I need to sand them some more and shape them a little bit, and then I'll be ready to glue them in after I paint this, because with those all off, it's going to make it a lot easier to mask this off evenly all the way around. So that's another reason for doing this, redoing this again, because I think it'll just turn out better to do it that way, to take off all the panels. It'll let me get a better mask job done on this, and I'll be able to paint this nice and even and then glue those panels in place. And then they're so small that I'm not going to need to airbrush them. I'll take a fine tip paintbrush like this one here, and I'll just paint the color they need to be, which is a little bit lighter of a gray than what the band is. So my mixture I'm going to go with for the light gray is, I'm going to take the Folk Art medium gray, and just keep in mind that if you didn't see the first or second video, go back and watch those, because some of these paints I did have to go and add some other colors to get them to more match what the Model Master and the AK colors look like that were being recommended. So go back and watch those. Make sure that you've got those mixtures down before you start this, otherwise the colors may not come out right for some of these colors. But the medium gray is just the basic, I believe the basic Folk Art medium gray, and I'm going to mix this up real quick, shake it up. I'm going to use 2 drops of the medium gray. And Gary explained this in his videos, but a drop is just whatever the size drop is that comes out of the container. And then I've got the Cottage White is what I decided to use as my white from Folk Art. So I'm going to use 1 drop. Oops. That was only like a half a drop. All right. 1 drop of the cottage white. I'll mix these together. And again, like I said, if this color looks too light or looks too dark to you, you can make adjustments as you see fit. This actually looks a little bit light to me, so I'm going to add, actually, you know what? No, I think we're going to go with that. 2 drops of the gray, 1 drop of the white. I think that once I spray that, it's going to be fine. Now, the other thing is, Gary shares his mixture for a thinning solution for these craft paints, and I was using this stuff. I was using this invisible glass for the longest time since I've been using craft paints to thin these out, and this has worked great. There's no dye to this, so it's clear. It didn't mess with the colors or the pigments in your paints. But I saw Gary share this mixture. I decided to try it out, and this mixture, you can go on Gary's page over at Mass Design, and he's got it shared on there. But basically, it is 1 cup of distilled water, 1 cup of isopropyl alcohol, and then 1 teaspoon each of this Liquitex acrylic medium. And they have this at Michael's and at my Hobby Lobby anyway. Let me zoom this back a little bit. But they had this at Michael's and my Hobby Lobby. I'm assuming they've got this at all Hobby Lobbies, but he recommends the Liquitex acrylic medium. This is the low dry. You can see here it says low dry medium. So, or slow dry. I'm sorry, I said low dry. Slow dry medium. So I got that at Home Depot for me. And also Michael's has the Liquitex of this next one, which is the flow medium. Now, my Hobby Lobby didn't have the Liquitex, but they did have this Master's Touch flow medium. It's the same stuff. I promise you, I've used this already, so I know that this works great. So you can use either the Liquitex flow medium if you can find it, along with this, or you can use this Master's Touch flow medium, which is available at Michael's, or I'm sorry, the Hobby Lobby, if that's all you got near you. So that's the concoction. And then I went to Walmart and got a ketchup and mustard bottle, condiment bottle, I guess you could say, and mixed it up in there. And now all I got to do is pop this cap off, and I can use this to dilute my paint, which is, when I was using the window cleaner, I would say that was more of like a 70-30. For me, that always worked well. This stuff here, so far I found Gary is correct in what he says, that this is like a 1-to-1. So you pretty much want this to be like a 50-50 mixture. But I'll put it in there, put it in here, mix it up real good, and then I'll take the brush and touch it to the side, and if it flows down the cup, you're good to go. It's not really flowing much right now, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And mix it some more. Alright, and now you see how that's running down the edge of the cup real good. So that is good and thinned out. So I am going to go and spray this on my BC deck. Oh, I'm out of focus. I'm going to go spray this on my BC deck, and we'll come back and take a look at it. Alright, so I've got the gray painted on, and again, you know, you have to look at this, and once you paint it, decide how light or how dark you want to go with that gray. I think it looks pretty good to my eyes, but you might want to go, if you want to go a little lighter, I did 2 drops of the medium gray and 1 drop of white. If you want to go a little lighter, you could try doing half and half. I think that might be a little too light, but again, it's personal preference. If you want to go a little darker, maybe do 3 of the medium gray, 3 drops medium gray, and then 1 drop of the white, just to darken it up a little bit. But again, just the median would be 2 drops of gray, 1 drop of the white, and see where you want to go from there. If you want to go a little darker or lighter, you can, but I think the 2 drops of gray and 1 drop of white is just fine. Those little panels that I've got to put back on after I finish getting this painted, those are going to have to be a little bit lighter of a gray. They're supposed to be a little bit lighter of a gray than this band. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do with that, since I went 2 drops of the gray and 1 drop of the white on this, I'll probably go 50-50 on that and do 2 drops of gray, 2 drops of white, and that should lighten it up enough to make a difference. It's supposed to be a little bit lighter than this gray band, but we'll take a look at that when we get to that point. The next thing I want to work on is doing the blue-gray on this back window here. So the next thing I need to do, and in case you're wondering, the reason why I am doing this is because this is not masking that comes with the kit. This is masking you're going to have to do yourself. And talking to Gary, it's just too many curves and bends to everything. Like I was saying, when I masked this off before, I found it difficult to mask it and then paint the gray. To me, it's easier just to paint the gray on. You know, you get a little overspray, so what? Paint the gray on and then come back and mask off the gray and then repaint white over it. Was easier for me. So that's what I'm going to do this time too. But in talking to Gary, it's just too many curves and bends in this to really be able to make a mask that's going to fit over this perfectly. So it's easier just come in here and mask it off yourself. And I want to take some of the tackiness out of this because I don't really need it to be that tacky. And I'm just going to mask this off to what looks right to me. You can look at the studio model pictures and kind of gauge where that blue line needs to end. And I think right there is going to be good for me. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, I'm just going to take some of the tackiness out of this. I don't need this to be overly tacky and start possibly pulling paint off. Hopefully I won't have that issue, but there's no point in taking any chances with it. If you don't have to, if you can take some of the tackiness out of this. And I just want this side to be even with the other side. So again, I'm just going to put this down to what looks right to me. And basically I want this line to be parallel with this edge of the window. So I've got the same line going there. All right, and that looks good to me. I think that'll do it. Now I'm going to put that blue-gray on here and we will come back and see where we're at. Alright, I've got that navy blue painted on, that blue-gray. And the paint mixture I used for this is I used, now make sure you go back because I did make some changes to this. This is the Cloudy Sky, Anita's acrylic. I did make a little bit of a change of this, I think, to make it more closely match the AK and the Model Master navy blue that they wanted you to use, blue-gray. But once you get that straight, I used 5 drops of this and then 1 drop each of a medium gray and the white that I've been using. And that's the color I came up with that looks closest to my eye. You know, you may toy around with it some once you get it, but it'll give you a good starting point. But that's what I went with as far as the blue-gray for the windows. You also want the same color for the top part of your bridge. This part here should be the same color as the officer's lounge windows, or the surrounding around the officer's lounge windows. So just keep that in mind when you mix that paint up. You're going to need it for both of those, so you may want to have both of those ready to paint at the same time, or you can store that paint for a short period if you need to. I think what Gary shows is basically putting it in a cup and then putting a piece of duct tape over that to kind of seal it, and you can hold it for a couple days to even a couple weeks sometimes, like that if you need to. So the next step is I'm going to let this dry a little bit because I just painted this, and I'm going to let that dry a bit and come back, and then I'm going to show you, I'm going to mask this off and I'll show you what I did to mask this off before I paint it. the final coat of white over this. And once I do that, my next step is going to be to work on this blue trim around the bridge here. But I've got to get the bridge, get a good idea where I want this bridge to set at, and then figure out where that pattern is going to fall around the bridge. So that's my next step. But I'm going to let this dry a little bit. I'm going to mask it off, and then before I hit it with the final coat of white to kind of blend everything in, I will come back and show you how I masked it. So stay tuned. Alright guys, so here's how I'm doing this. I've got my blue, or my navy blue gray, I guess you could say, and my gray band. And what I'm doing now is masking off the gray band. Now this is the way I do it. This isn't the way everybody does it. This isn't the only way to do this, but this is what's working for me right now. And the reason why I'm liking doing it this way is because I've got this gray band that's painted on here, and it's overlapped. And I'm using my, this isn't Tamiya brand, but it's 1mm masking, or 2mm masking tape. And I'm able to run this around continuously without a break in it. When I'd done this before I took it all back, took a step back, I had done separate little masks, and I didn't quite get an even line. I didn't like the way it looked. Another reason why I took a step back, and I'm redoing this. But this is turning out a lot better. The way this is working is I'm able to run this single piece in a loop around the base. And because it's a black background, but I've got white masking tape, and even if it was yellow it would work, like the Tamiya tape. But it lets me look at the contour and make sure that I'm happy with the way that gray line is going to shape around the BC deck here. And if I see something maybe where it's a little bit out of alignment, or I don't like where it looks like it's kind of bumped up a little bit, or it's a little bit of a hump in it, I can move it and take care of that now, versus masking it and then painting and then coming back and saying, oh well, that doesn't quite look even. I can make sure that I'm getting this line even, and I like the way it looks, and then I'll cover this over with the white and pull this back, and where this white band is now, where the white masking tape is, of course, will be the gray that stays behind. So that's working out pretty well. It looks like the line is looking pretty good as far as I can tell. I'm pretty happy with the contours on it, and you've got this little curve back here where it curves down just a little bit to come back around behind the officer's lounge window. So that was one issue I was able to work out, is right in this corner. It just didn't look right, and I was able to use this tape to kind of move it around a little bit and make it to where it looks like there's a nice smooth bend in it. But I'm going to keep working on that. I'm going to mask off the top line, and then if I have to add any mask in the middle center line around, I'll do that. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to get this painted, and we'll come back and see how it turns out. Alright guys, so I've got this ready now. I've masked off to do the, let me turn this overhead light on. I've masked off to do the clamshell, as a lot of people refer to it, the blue coloring around the on top of the BC deck around the bridge. And I've masked this off. Now, you don't have to do this. The studio model, this was a painted on detail. On the kit model, it's a raised detail, but it was just painted on. If you look at images of the studio model, it's just a painted on detail. So you can, what I did was I sanded it off. It allows me to put my bridge where I want to anyway, and allows me to better line things up versus if I just use the raised detail. And then I position the bridge further forward, and then it's not lining up the way. And it's a small thing. It's not really that big of a deal. It's just it allows me to line things up a little bit better doing it this way versus leaving the raised detail on there. And the way I masked this off, in case you're interested, I used now before I used white tape on a gray background, but that doesn't work too well. Whenever I'm doing something on like a white background or lighter colored background, I use the Tamiya 2mm, I think this is, masking tape, and that allows me to do these nice curves evenly. And with it being a brighter color versus the white, it lets me look at it from different angles and make sure that this is lining up and looking the way I want it to, versus if I use the white like I used on the gray background, it'd be harder to tell. So just one tip there, especially if you're new to modeling. If you're going to do masking and do masking different shapes, use a different color than what the background is, because it makes it easier to tell if that shape is off or if you're not liking it, versus once you get the paint on and then you look at it and you're like, oh, that doesn't quite look right. Well, make sure you use a tape that's going to let you see that it's where you want it. So that's 2mm Tamiya, and then you've got these little, this little piece won't stay down this one, but that's all right. That's going to be masked. This is all going to be masked off on the outside anyway. These little black tapes that you see doing the little kind of whiskers. Whiskers. I got cats, so they look like whiskers to me. But these little indentures here that are supposed to stay white, I've used 1/32 graphic tape, which I used a smaller size of this to mask off the chiller grills on my 1400 Enterprise. See, it was either that or maybe I used that. I might have used that on the well, now Fan Home Enterprise, Build the Enterprise D, when I redid the chiller grills on that. But 1/32 graphic tape, I find it looks to be the correct size to me as far as adding those details back in. And what I'm going to do now is, the bridge isn't glued on. I've just got it sitting there because it makes it, I want to be able to paint this and not have to worry about masking off the bridge. And it just makes it a little easier to do that. So now that I've got this masked off and I'm happy with the way it looks, these lines fall. This cutback should land right behind where this curve on the bridge is, and that's lining up properly. And then all these little whiskers, I guess you could say, the innermost or the outermost line should fall in line with your where your spotlight's going to be, so it should fall in line with the edge of that, and then this one should be just inside of that on both all your lights. So this one is lined up with the outer edge of the forward, and then this one's just inside of that. But so just a little detail. Like I said, it's not a big deal to mess with that, but hey, why not? If you're trying to add more detail to your model and get a little closer to the studio model than possible. Now I'm gonna paint this with a different blue. I'm gonna redo this blue. I'm not happy. It looks a little dark to me. This blue that I put around the bridge. So I'm going to use a mixture which is from Mass Design for the, I'm going to use the powder blue mixture that Gary has for that, because I want this model sitting next to my Oberth, which I'm building still. I want it to match up. I want the colors to match up, and that powder blue, I want it to look the same on both. So I'm going to actually redo this instead of using the Trek Modeler paint, which I think is it's just a little too dark to me. And at smaller scales, you want to use a lighter color. And even this gray, the gray band that I use, which the more I look at it, the better it turned out. I like the way that turned out. But I probably would have used it a little bit lighter for gray here, just because when you look at it in pictures, it looks really dark. And but in person, it's not bad. But it's just taking photos of it. I posted some pictures of this done, and it just looks a little dark in the pictures. But other than that, in person, it looks pretty correct to me. But so I'm going to get that blue painted on, and we'll come back and take a look at the final result. All right, guys, so here it is. I've got that clamshell pattern. Let me focus here. Painted on there. It turned out pretty nice. I like it. It's nice and crisp and clean around the edges. I had a little bit of just the slightest little bit of underbleed where the tape was right there. I think that's where I had the two pieces of Tamiya joined together. Didn't quite have it down, but that's an easy fix. The great thing about craft paints is I could take just one of my fine point Q-tips and just take that off, or even just scrape it off probably, because it's not 100% dried yet. But I like the way it turned out. Let's put the bridge on here and take a look. Oh, let me get that lined up on there. And there we go. And it turned out real nice. And that light blue that Gary came up with over there at Mass Design, I think Hagen Miller, Mr. Hagen Miller over at our Star Trek Model Builders group, had a hand in these paint colors. It's a pretty good color. I like that. I like it a lot better than the blue that I used that's on there now. So I'm going to repaint this edge around the bridge here the same color, because I really like that blue. I think that's pretty close to what I would expect it to look like on the studio model. But turned out real nice. I'm real happy with it. BC deck's running along real good. So the next thing I want to do is I do want to start on, I kind of, like I said, I think I had said before, let me focus. Get back into focus here. I always have to focus, but if I use the autofocus on my camera, it just keeps going in and out, in and out. So it's better just for me to focus myself. In case you're wondering, why don't you just have the autofocus turned on? I had it like that for a while. If you look at some of my older videos, it would just keep going in and out of focus, and it's better for me to focus it myself. But anyway, on topic. What I want to do is kind of, and I mentioned this, I want to work from the top down and out. For the most part, there's a couple of things where I'm getting ready to start working on my rec deck now to put in there, and I've got my officer's lounge done, which is actually the dining room from Star Trek 6, but here that is painted up. I ran some fiber optics, and you're probably not even going to be able to see most of this. I do have a 3D printed where I made the chandelier that hangs over the table. That's already in here, got a light hooked up to it. And that's going to kind of block a lot of this back wall here. So I don't even think you're going to see much of it. But anyway, I've got that ready to go. And ready to install. I've got to put my my window back in. I took it out to redo the painting because it's just easier to do it that way. But what I wanted to work on now is there's a couple of iridescent shapes that we need, some squares and stuff that I need to get painted on the top here. And then of course my phone's gonna ring, and then I'll be ready to finish up this BC deck. I got to put the lighting in here and hang that up, sorry about that. I've got to put the lighting in the back here, and then I can glue this bridge in place and be done with the top section. And then I'm going to move on to the iridescence around the BC deck here. And then I want to finalize my parts. The impulse crystal, I want to get that finalized and all that before I work on the iridescence of the top of the saucer. So that's what I'm going to work on now. I've got to work on, there's no masks that come for this top part. Gary said it's just too difficult to make masks, that will just come off the sheet in one piece because it's curved. Although I noticed on the Kronos 1, it looks like he's learning some new tricks. He's done some curves on that using multiple masks instead of trying to cut one piece. So that's what I'm gonna have to do myself here, is just use some masking tape and kind of tape off the areas I want to make iridescent on the top here. And so I'm gonna work on that now, and then we'll come back and take a look before I put the paint on. We'll come back and take a look at what I got. Alright guys, so here's what I've got worked up to paint the top of the B and C deck. And let me get this in a little closer here, see if I got to focus. So a lot of this is based on the Trek modeler paint, but there's also some other areas I added based on what I saw, what I think I see when I look at the pictures of the studio model. And I see a couple more spots that aren't on the Trek modeler guide, and maybe it's just me seeing things, I don't know. But either way look at it, I kind of like I kind of wanted to add a couple more colors to this, because I'm pretty sure when I look at the studio model, it looks to me like there's a blue here and maybe one up front here. So I'm going to add some blue. The Trek modeler guide calls for these to all be the gray, or the gold iridescent colors. But I just wanted to throw in something else, because when I look at it, it looks like there's some blues up here as well. So I'm going to put blue here and probably another blue right here, or I may do it on this side just to add some blue to that side. But that's my plan. I'm gonna do some mostly gold, but I'm gonna throw in a blue or two, just because I think when I look at it, pictures of the studio model, it looks like there's some blue up here. And it could just be the angle of the camera, the lighting, or what have you. But to me, that's the way it looks. Plus, I don't really want to just do gold up top. I'd like to have some other color up here. So I'm going to do some blue. And so I'm going to throw those on, and we'll come back, unmask it, and see what we've got. Alright guys, so I've got that first step in the pearlescence done. I got the masking removed, and you can see the results there. You see I got that one of blue, you can see there. And there's another blue right in the front there, you can see. And the rest of these are in gold. So it turned out really nice. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. So that's pretty much that for that step. Now all I got left to do is, before I can attach the bridge, I've got to get, I got to get back in focus. I got to get the lights installed. I've got a SMD I need to install on the back here, and I might do a little touch-up paint there. Looks like I nicked it, but that's why. But I've got to put an SMD back here for the strobe. I need to use, I've got my wide-angled, I don't have them sitting up here. I've got my wide-angled LEDs. I'm going to use one in the front for the front here to shine on the registry. And then I'm going to use probably a regular 3mm LED towards the back here to light up this back section. These little semi-oval air lights here, and then also see how this lighting turns out around the hatch here where I've opened it up. So I've got to get that worked in, and I'm going to work on that, but I think this video is getting about a half-hour long, so I don't want to drag too long in these episodes, but plus it's been a while since I've gotten an episode up for the Ian Lawrence tribute build. So I want to get this one out and let y'all take a look at the progress so far. A little bit of a step back, but we're moving forward now, and I like the progress on this. I like how everything's turning out so far. So I'm going to get the lights wired up in this, and I'll show you that in the next video. And I'm going to get that officer's lounge finalized, and then I've got to work on my rec deck that I've got 3D printed over there. I'm also going to work on, next video, I'll get these front panels reinstalled and show you how I'm doing that. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching these videos. I appreciate everybody giving me some feedback, and hope everybody's getting some use out of these. If you get some use out of these, please hit that subscribe button down below, and then hit that bell icon if you want to get the updates automatically. But if you don't want to subscribe, please at least hit that like button down below and let me know that you've gotten some use out of this video. But again, guys, thank you again. Appreciate my sponsors, Cass over at Lake Monster Details, Gus over at GCals, and now we got Gary over at Mask Design. And I'm going to be using his mask starting off with this round section here around the bridge. As soon as we get to that, I do have one more section down here below the BC, at the bottom of the BC deck to paint, that there are not masks for. There are some pearlescents that go around this bottom edge here, and we'll look at that in the next video as well. So again, everybody, thank you again. Till next time, keep modeling.